wonderful to meet you today. And it's a lovely pleasure to chat with you because, after all, 2021 is coming soon to us and 2020 is coming to an end. And these events in Hong Kong, like the political events, the social events, the changes in Hong Kong, have created an immense impact on Hong Kong throughout the past year. And as we're looking forward to the new year, we'd like to talk with you a lot about, say, for example, a lot of the economic and social policies in Hong Kong. They include the Greater Bay Area, the One Belt, One Road policy, and a lot of the other future city as a smart city, all these kind of different ideas that the people would love to learn about and maybe propose. And therefore, we are very happy today to have you today to discuss these topics with us. And I'm sure you have like a presentation to talk a little bit briefly about these policies and maybe give us a background about the talents and the job opportunities in both Hong Kong and the mainland China as a start.
Great. Well, Sabrina, thank you very much indeed. And good morning, everybody. It really is a great pleasure to be joining you today here from Hong Kong. I'm particularly delighted to be joining the Future City Summit 2020, and Invest Hong Kong also delighted to be supporting the event. I know that you've got an action-packed day ahead. And hopefully what I can do is set the scene a little bit and tell you a little bit about some of the things that are going on here in Hong Kong and in wider Asia that perhaps will help frame the discussions later today. And also what I hope to do is illustrate how through collaboration Hong Kong perhaps can contribute to a much wider agenda across the world and ultimately create shared prosperity. So if I could move on to my slides now. So what I'd like to do over the next 25 minutes probably is first of all set the scene. As we all know, it's a very challenging global environment in which we're operating. But then I'd like to turn to some of the opportunities that I see. And as Sabrina said, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Greater Bay Area, which I think is the most exciting economic development initiative probably on the planet right now. I'd then like to talk about the Belt and Road Initiative, which I think is something where collaboration really can lead to shared prosperity for so very many people along the Belt and Road routes. I'd then like to talk about Hong Kong's smart city blueprint, because I'm sure we'd all agree that future cities really are going to have to be smart cities. I'd then like to share a little bit about Hong Kong's focus on talent and creating jobs, particularly for young people in these very difficult economic times. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about how Invest Hong Kong helps in terms of economic development and job creation. So the scene, as we all know, is a challenging one around the world. There's some manifest problems that we're all facing. COVID-19, the biggest amongst those, but clearly that is having a detrimental impact on economies all around the world, making it very, very challenging for businesses and for individuals who very sadly have lost their jobs. Unemployment is a significant issue in many places around the world. It's certainly an acute issue here in Hong Kong. And we're particularly sensitive to the impact that it's having on young people. Climate change is also an issue that the world has to face up to. And certainly something that really relates to the city's agenda. And then, of course, we're dealing with a very complex geopolitical environment around the world. And certainly in my 35-year career, I don't think I've ever known such a complicated geopolitical jigsaw puzzle that we're all dealing with. But I'm confident that we can solve these problems through effective collaboration. And collaboration really can lead to change. So if we look at some of the commitments recently to net zero, here in Hong Kong in the policy address, just a couple of weeks ago, our chief executive committed to Hong Kong achieving net zero by 2050. China itself having committed to net zero by 2060. Undoubtedly, young people will make a difference to the world going forward and really are the future. And by working with young entrepreneurs around the world and deploying technology-driven solutions, I think we can begin to tackle some of these challenges that we have, but also realize the opportunities along the way and create prosperity for all. I'd now like to talk a little bit about the Greater Bay Area, which is an area in southern China. So I'll just go through a little bit of detail for those of you who aren't familiar with it. So the Greater Bay Area is a national policy of China. And what it envisages is the closer economic integration of 9 key cities in Guangdong province, plus the 2 special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau. There's a number of strategic intentions behind it. First of all, to leverage the innovation that's taking place within GBA, to develop the region as a really international competitive economic hub, to get business to thrive, to generate that prosperity for the people of the region. But also it goes beyond business. It is about the livability of the region. So tackling sustainability, tackling the ecology of the region, and genuinely making GBA a pleasant home for the 72 million citizens. So whilst we're sorting out the technical issues, maybe I can share with you a little bit about the Greater Bay Area in a bit more depth. So GBA consists of these 11 cities, 9 in Guangdong plus the 2 special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau. The region is home to 72 million people, with the highest GDP per capita within the whole of China. But also what makes GBA stand out is GBA is both home to Hong Kong as a world-class international financial centre, and secondly, also home to some of China's most innovative companies. So what we have is the ingredients to make this region emerge as one of the leading city clusters globally for both financial services as a driver of growth and innovation, which obviously transcends almost every sector of the economy these days. And what the Greater Bay Area envisages is this closer economic integration of the 11 cities. And to make that happen, what we will see is the continued introduction of policy initiatives to allow for the freer movement of people, goods, services, and capital within the region. At the practical level, this will mean more harmonisation of standards to allow this movement of goods around the region. It will see changes to some of the immigration controls to allow people to move around. And at the really practical level, it will ease the customs procedures to allow the movement of goods throughout the region. So on this slide, you can see the Greater Bay Area shown on a little map. What is also very significant is this region is about 11% of China's total GDP already. So that makes it a very heavyweight economic region. However, the potential is really what I think is most exciting on the commercial front. Today, the Greater Bay Area is about the 11th largest economy in the world in its own right. So it's already very significant. But if we look forward 10 years, the Greater Bay Area could be in the top 5 economic entities globally. And clearly that means opportunity. That means opportunity for all of you. And of course, Hong Kong is a great place to tap into those opportunities. This is a little bit of a fun slide that tries to bring to life what the Greater Bay Area is already. So rather than boring data, this looks at some household names in terms of global brands and what already exists in terms of some of those famous brands in terms of their footprint in the Greater Bay Area, in comparison with two other major Bay Areas in the world, the San Francisco Bay Area and Tokyo Bay. And you can see for H&M, for Mercedes, LVMH, Apple, IKEA, GBA is already home to many, many stores and in many ways dwarfs the other Bay Areas. As I said, to make GBA work, it will require quite a lot of new policies and implementation measures. And these are just 8 key policy priorities that have been introduced already. I'm not going to go through all of them, and we will be sharing the slides later, but maybe I'd just highlight a few of them that I think will show this is very practically focused on leveraging and realizing the benefits of the economic integration. So the first one applies to Hong Kong residents who spend time within Guangdong province. And this will mean that if they spend less than 183 days going in and out of the Greater Bay Area, that they won't be caught within the mainland Chinese tax net, which has a different tax to Hong Kong. There's also going to be a tax relief scheme for high-end talents working within GBA, and also a whole range of different supports policies to help young entrepreneurs thrive in this vibrant economic region. And at the very practical level, this smoothing of the movement of goods through speedy customs clearance, the last point on this slide. In Hong Kong, our chief executive gave her annual policy address just about 2 weeks ago. And a number of new initiatives were announced in the policy address. I'm not going to go through the detail, but what we will see is a number of exciting developments, which I'd just very quickly like to highlight. So in financial services, we will see mutual access between the mainland and Hong Kong in financial markets. This builds upon the many Connect programs that already exist. But it does mean that a financial services business based in Hong Kong increasingly will be able to serve customers within GBA. We'll also see the development of new initiatives around real estate investments, trusts, around private equity, and around family offices. And I'll come on to family offices a little bit later. Hong Kong, as I'm sure many of you know, is a very important international aviation hub already. And the policy address touches on some further developments. By 2024, we'll have a 3-way runway system in Hong Kong. Hong Kong Airport Authority will be taking a further stake in Zhuhai Airport on the western side of the Pearl River Delta, which will build this cluster of aviation within the region. Also, there will be further developments around the airport in Hong Kong called Airport City. And we're going to see an exciting introduction of cross-boundary commercial helicopter services to allow business people to hop in and out of GBA from Hong Kong and going to cities within Guangdong. Innovation, as I said, is at the very heart of the overall vision for the Greater Bay Area. We will see the development of a major innovation cluster on the boundary between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. So this will provide more opportunities for businesses to leverage the two systems that exist. Hong Kong, a common law-based legal system, and Shenzhen as part of the mainland. We're also seeing some really exciting developments around talent attraction in innovation. In the policy address, we announced a new initiative to attract high-quality STEM talent to Hong Kong. And my own team at Invest Hong Kong will be working with our colleagues all around the world to attract high quality talent, to tap into these growing job opportunities that will exist within Greater Bay Area. And there's a whole range of new talent schemes that will support innovation-led talent to develop their careers in the Greater Bay Area. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on. Some other GBA initiatives worth talking about. At Invest Hong Kong, we're going to be working with our counterparts in the other 10 cities to really get much more sophisticated in terms of talking to a company, let's say in ASEAN, about what they can do sensibly in Hong Kong, but then what they could also do in one of the other cities. So an example could be a biotech company that might want to do R&D in Hong Kong, raise capital, have a strategy and management team, but needs a manufacturing facility where Zhongshan could be a really ideal location for that in their biotech park. For companies registered in Hong Kong, there will be a lot of support to help them enter the GBA region. And our sister organisation, the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, will be providing much of that support. We'll see further development in cross-boundary infrastructure, which really will help make these things happen. And another very practical example of where we're seeing the recognition, the mutual recognition of standards, is that Hong Kong registered drugs and devices will be allowed within GBA in facilities operated by Hong Kong-owned entities. So hopefully this just gives you a little bit of a flavour of what's going on in GBA. I'd just like to say a few things about Hong Kong's role in innovation and technology, where under the GBA strategy, Invest Hong Kong is positioned as the international innovation centre for the whole country of China. And there's a lot of things that have gone on in Hong Kong over the last few years to make this happen. So a lot of policy support from the government. For instance, we've introduced R&D cash rebates. We've introduced a significant tax incentive for R&D investment, 300% for the first 2 billion Hong Kong dollars, 200% thereafter. So that's to entice companies, to encourage companies to invest in R&D. We've also got a pool of very high quality talent in Hong Kong, great universities here, generating the type of talent that businesses in innovation need. And that's all supplemented by great infrastructure and research capability. So fundamental research coming out of our universities. We have a number of research institutes in Hong Kong that work together with businesses to help them on the innovation journey. And then we have physical space such as the Hong Kong Science and Technology Port and Cyberport, where actually we are right now presenting to you. Another big opportunity that I think we're going to see over the decades to come arises from the Belt and Road Initiative. As you may know, this was conceived by China in 2013, but it's envisaged very much as a collaborative initiative. And ultimately, the aim is to see greater connectivity for trade and investment flows, but also enhance people-to-people links. And ultimately, it will lead to shared prosperity for people along the routes. And really, the routes foresee the closer economic integration and trade and investment flows between Asia and all the way to Europe, through a land route going through Central Asia and Russia to Europe, but also a maritime route that goes through Southeast Asia, through the Indian Ocean, through the Middle East, and again to Europe. But actually, Belt and Road goes beyond that, and many more countries around the world are participating in it. At the practical level, really, Belt and Road is about creating shared prosperity for all. I think many people today think of Belt and Road as about infrastructure, And that certainly is the case. And infrastructure is a key building block to realising the overall vision for Belt and Road. City development is also going to be really important along the way, and that clearly relates to the overall agenda of the Future Cities Summit. But it's much, much more than bricks and mortar. In the years to come, we will see businesses accessing the Belt and Road countries through digital delivery, through e-commerce, through edtech, through e-healthcare, fintech, a whole range of different services, logistics, and much, much more. So I'd encourage you to think in terms of your own business about how, in the longer term, you can access these markets. And Hong Kong has a really important role to play. It's a great place to set up joint ventures with other partners in a jurisdiction that is recognised around the world. You can find partners here in Hong Kong that can help you develop the opportunities. And of course, tapping into Hong Kong's financial and professional services can help you raise the capital that you may need to drive the development of the business. I'd now like to just say a few words about future cities as smart cities. I'm sure we agree that all cities are going to have to be smart cities in the future if we're to address carbon neutrality, if we're to address the livability of cities and so forth. Hong Kong has very recently, just actually in the last week, issued our second edition of our Smart City Blueprint. And the vision really is to, not surprisingly, embrace innovation and technology to ensure that Hong Kong genuinely is a smart city. And the mission, as you can see, has a number of different factors. It's to make people happier, healthier, smarter, and more prosperous. It's to enable businesses to capitalise on the overall business environment in Hong Kong and turning Hong Kong into a living lab to test new technologies and new solutions. In Hong Kong, we have a rapidly ageing population, so that's a very important part of our overall agenda, ensuring that our old people are cared for as much as possible in the home, but when outside the home, that they get world-class services to help them in their old age. But also supporting the youth in terms of creating high-quality job prospects for them in the future. And going to the net zero agenda, it's about ensuring that we use fewer resources to make Hong Kong much more environmentally friendly, whilst maintaining the vibrancy that Hong Kong is so well known for. The Smart City Blueprint contains elements that I'm sure you would expect in terms of smart mobility, smart living, the environment, people, government, and the economy. And if you would like more information about the blueprint, it is available online. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. Just a few words now about talent and jobs. Obviously, economic conditions mean that around the world, a lot of people very sadly have lost their employment. And that's certainly the case in Hong Kong. And young people have been disproportionately affected. So in Hong Kong, we're certainly taking steps to try and help generate new jobs for the future. And a number of initiatives were covered off in the policy address just a couple of weeks ago. The first is the creation of 30,000 jobs in Hong Kong for those that have lost their opportunities at the moment. At Invest Hong Kong, we're participating in it, and we've actually increased our headcount by 10% with these short-term job opportunities to help people in these very difficult times. A Greater Bay Youth Employment Scheme has been announced, which will help up to 2,000 young entrepreneurs from Hong Kong develop their careers in the Greater Bay Area, focus on innovation and technology. The Youth Development Commission also have a program where 100 million Hong Kong dollars will support nearly 200 youth startups develop their businesses within the GBA, working with our counterparts within GBA cities. Also, we're creating a number of different jobs by promoting certain sectors in construction, in innovation and technology, property management, creative industries, the legal profession, and green-related industries. For those that are less skilled, the Employee Retraining Board is also going to be working very hard to help people reskill for this new economy that we're all facing. And then finally, we'll also be looking to bring in high quality talent from around the world where we have pinch points in our economy. And that's something that my team at Invest Hong Kong will be working on, working with our colleagues across government and across the private sector, our universities, and a whole range of other very important stakeholders. I'd now like to just conclude by talking a little bit about what Invest Hong Kong does. Ultimately, our role is to create jobs for Hong Kong and to add to the economic development of the city. How that manifests itself is very practically, we help companies from around the world and from the mainland to set up and grow in our city. And we do this at every step of the way. So we talk to companies through our 32 offices around the world about what Hong Kong could mean for them, how they might capture those opportunities in the Greater Bay Area that I've highlighted, and also the Belt and Road. We then help companies through the setup process, through the launch process, getting them plugged into networks so they can help the business grow. And ultimately, in the longer term, we continue to work with companies to help them grow in our city. But that can be growing by tapping into the opportunities in wider Asia, GBA, ASEAN, Belt and Road, and so forth. Finally, I'd just like to talk a little bit about a new initiative that we have around attracting family offices from around the world to Hong Kong. Family offices obviously generate wealth in themselves, but they also provide the capital that will help fuel further innovation and the growth of early stage scale-up businesses to capture the opportunities in the region. So this is a very important ingredient to the overall agenda. Now, I'm very conscious that I've covered an awful lot of topics very shallowly in a short space of time. If I or my colleagues in 32 cities around the world can help, please do feel free to get in touch anytime. You can see my contact details here. You can find me on LinkedIn or on WeChat. But thank you for the opportunity to chat to you. And I'm now looking forward to having a chat with Sabrina about some of the detail.
Wonderful.
Thank you.